Hello, friends, and welcome to the Original Gamers Podcast. I will be your host this week. My name is Joel Watt. Patrick Ryan is not feeling well, and Nolan had prior commitments, but I am joined today by LJ Lowry. Say hello.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Hey. All right, so this week we're going to be talking about Mortal Kombat, the original game that came out in 1992. But before we get into that, what have you been playing, LJ?
So as everybody has probably seen on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, I just got the Doom Collector's Edition last night. So I've been playing that. I kind of stayed up a little late last night, but it is a ton of fun, and it's faithful to everything that is known for Doom. So, which is I'm happy about.
Yes, and this is the new Doom that just came out.
Yeah,
not the old one.
I went to the midnight launch.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And so, I mean, it seems like all these old games from the 90s are getting rebooted, and they're not changing their names either. It's a little confusing. Yeah. So, like, we got Mortal Kombat, the 92 version, and there's also Mortal Kombat came out in, what was it, 2012. Now we have Doom that came out in the 90s, and Doom that came out in 2016. Like, yeah. And of course, they both have movies based on them of the same name. And anyway, I have been playing Uncharted 3 finally, because Uncharted 4 just came out on Tuesday.
Nice. That was tough for me. I had to choose between the two, and I'm like, you know what? I've been a fan of Doom since day one, so that's what I went with. Yeah,
not really have been into Doom. Played a little bit when it came out. Also, little Duke Nukem. Those are my experiences with first-person shooters back in the day. I played a little bit of Doom and a little bit of Duke Nukem on PC way back in the day on a friend's computer. But yeah. Anyway, we're talking about the original Mortal Kombat today, which was developed by Midway Games and was also published by Midway Games for the arcades, and then the home versions were published by THQ Acclaim, one of their subsidiaries, Arena, and in Europe it was published by Virgin Games. All those others than Midway were the home console versions.
That's crazy, it's got so many.
Yes. There's a lot of different versions, though.
Yeah. Okay, so for our designers here, we have Ed Boon and John Tobias. And for art directors, we have John Tobias and John Vogel.
Yes, and those four guys made up the original development team.
Yeah, that was it.
Just those four guys, they knocked it out pretty quickly. We'll talk about that in a minute. Of course, the music was composed by Dan Forden and Matt Furness, and they did a really good job.
All these American names, it's kind of a switch-up.
Yeah, it's really nice to be able to easily pronounce their names. This is definitely an American game, and it shows. Actually.
Oh yeah, for sure. Let me see what else.
It was created by Ed Boon and John Tobias, which we've already mentioned. And that, of course, these guys, they're still making Mortal Kombat games to this day.
Yeah.
These guys,
It's a bigger team now, obviously.
Obviously, and it's no longer strictly Midway. Midway has been bought and sold several times. Who makes Mortal Kombat today? Can't remember now.
Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers, that's right.
Yep.
All of these companies that used to be independent are now owned by the bigger companies.
Just
how the industry
only like 4 or 5 big ones, if that.
Yeah. I remember when all these, like, I remember when Acclaim used to make their own games.
Oh, I know.
They published
Rock and all that stuff. And...
Yeah, they they've gone under. I don't remember Arena Games. Apparently, Arena. I was like, "Who the heck is Arena?" And I did some research in it, and they ended up as a subsidiary of Acclaim.
Huh.
But yeah,
Yeah, I never
THQ
heard of
was
them
pretty
either.
big for a while, and they're not around anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
I think Virgin still publishes certain games, but they're
Very
really
few, I
not.
think.
Yeah, they don't have as much of a presence as they do anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, this game has an initial release date of October 8th, 1992. That was when it was first released in the arcade. Uh, and of course, it has been ported to pretty much every platform conceivable since then.
Oh
Just
yeah.
to give a quick rundown, ones I found
I was only
online
2 years old when that came out.
you were only 2?
Yeah. Well, actually, no. Wait. Probably 3. I was born in '90.
Okay,
No. Yeah. Around there somewhere.
dang.
Yeah.
I was 8 years old. This game came out.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but the platforms that has been ported to is the Amiga computer, the Game Boy, believe it or not, the Game Gear,
Wow.
the Genesis/Mega Drive, mobile phones, modern smartphones, a DOS version for PC, the PlayStation 2, eventually the PlayStation Network, the Sega CD, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, SNES, Windows, Xbox, and Xbox Live Arcade. So, like I said, pretty much every thing conceivable
That's the
since the
thing
90s.
is, since the arcade or since the collection is no longer on Steam, I forget why. But I found the PC versions of 1, 2, and 3 on, I think it's GOG.com.
Yes, on Good Old Games. It's probably still there. Yeah, and I bet you the Good Old Games version is the DOS version, just kind of made to work on modern computers.
Yeah.
I know that like all these home console ports and the old DOS port and things like that, they're not arcade perfect. The closest to arcade perfect that we ever got was the trilogy collection or whatever that was on Steam, Xbox Live Arcade, and PlayStation Network. Those are the closest we got to arcade perfect home versions. Of course, if you have $2,500, you can buy an arcade machine.
Dang, that's a lot.
But I wouldn't recommend going that route.
That'd still be pretty sweet, though.
It would be pretty sweet, but yeah, I think even the digital versions that were close to arcade perfect still had some sound issues. They looked and played exactly the same, but they didn't quite sound the same.
Yeah, the DOS version. It was funny because I was reading reviews and I heard little sound issues, but I had grown up with the Sega Genesis version, which we'll get into later. But and all the sound and the music is so different. When I played the DOS version, I was like, "Whoa!" I'm like,
Yeah,
"That's way cooler than what I experienced."
It is way different on Genesis.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I can't believe there's even a mobile phone port. Like that's
I
kind
actually
of fun.
tried looking for one, and I don't know if it's on modern phones or not. I know they have Mortal Kombat 10, but I haven't seen the regular one. At least on Android.
Okay. Well, yeah, I didn't look too much into that. I just saw that there was, in fact, a mobile phone port. So I plopped it in there. And every version has its own release date, and so we're not going to go over that. If our listeners are genuinely interested in that, I point you toward the Wikipedia page. Just search for Mortal Kombat 1992 on Wikipedia, and you will find all those release dates. So,
right there.
yeah. Moving on, this game was reportedly developed in only 10 months, from 1991 to 92. The test version seeing limited release halfway through its development cycle, which is staggering by today's standards. The fact that they were able to pump out a working version of the game in only 5 months and then have a completed game in 10.
Especially with all the mocap stuff and everything. Like,
yeah.
Kind of crazy.
Well, it wasn't necessarily motion capture back then. It was
I forget
what they do. It was digitized photos.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. So motion capture is slightly different technology, but it's same idea. That you have real people acting out the animations that you want to put on in the game. So because this game used digitized photos in place of regular sprites, there was a lot more detail in them. Each character had 64 colors and 300 frames of animation, which is a lot for back then.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, you look at Street Fighter 2, and each character probably had 16 colors,
Yeah.
At most. And I would say probably way less than 100 frames of animation. In the original, like, World Warrior version that came out on SNES. I think by the time they got to, Super Turbo Championship Arcade Edition, whatever it was called, there was a lot more frames because it played faster and everything, but still, yeah. Now, of course, the inspiration for this game is Jean-Claude Van Damme, who is the action star of the 90s. And I remember watching a film that he was in that I probably should not have watched. It's called Bloodsport. It is rated R. Yeah, it is a great movie. It's got a decent story. It's based on a true story. And of course, like the name suggests, it is bloody. And it's all about mixed martial arts combat, like underground tournaments back in the day. Yeah. So, of course, there's a parody of Jean-Claude. His name is Johnny Cage, and of course he shares the initials with Mr. Van Damme.
Yeah.
And
what's funny is I never put two and two together. Like, like when I read that, whenever I was going over the show notes earlier, I'm like, wow, I guess that does make sense.
Mortal Kombat actually has a lot of parody characters. There's a Bruce Lee parody. Now, Street Fighter also has a Bruce Lee homage. I can't remember their names off the top of my head. I think there's a Jackie Chan type character eventually. Of course, there's all the different ninjas with the palette swaps. Homage to the great old ninja films. I think Goro is just, classic monster.
It definitely took a lot of cues from a lot of martial arts movies, stuff like that.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about the Mortal Kombat series is it's always had a deep lore to it, and they've really expanded upon that with the last two games that they've come out with. I know that in the original trilogy that came out in the arcades and for home consoles at the time, there was a bit of a story there, and if you really dug deep into the manuals, you could find it, but not really in the game. Nowadays, with how big games can be, there's fully animated cutscenes, full motion video, whatever you want to call it. But and the best part is it's in-game engine cutscenes. It's not pre-rendered or anything.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say that we don't even have instruction booklets anymore.
Exactly.
The tutorials and everything we have is explained within the game now. It's instead of wasting paper, let's just stop making them.
Yeah, even Nintendo has stopped putting instruction booklets in their games. That's a sign of the times right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like I remember, I picked up. I have it right here sitting next to me. So I have New Super Mario Brothers for the Wii and New Super Mario Brothers U. And New
Oh,
Super
okay.
Mario Brothers Wii is twice as heavy in its case as U is
Because the Wii has
because
the booklet, right?
yes, because the Wii has an actual booklet in it, whereas the U version it's it's like a tiny little pamphlet,
Yeah.
and I mean even with the English and Spanish and French inside the one booklet, it's still tiny, maybe 15 pages. Like
Oh.
because it's all explained within the game. It's not like that,
Yeah.
New Super Mario Brothers is a complicated game anyway, but
Mhm.
still, like they took their time to explain how it worked on Wii, but not
Yeah.
on Wii U. You know, so yeah. Now, one of the interesting mechanics in Mortal Kombat that differentiates it from, say, Street Fighter 2, which is its direct competitor, is the dizzied mechanic. In Street Fighter 2, if like somebody performs a good combo or something like that, like your character gets dizzied, and so your opponent gets a chance to get a free hit on you. And Ed Boon hated this. He despised this mechanic, but he did like the idea that you get a free hit on your opponent. And so he's like, you
Yeah.
know what? Let's put that at the end of the fight when it's already been decided, rather than my
Right.
opponent gets lucky, with
Yeah.
this free hit. And so that's how the fatality came about. Is
Mhm.
you have a few seconds to think of what you're going to do, and so you might as well, put in this crazy complicated button combination, and something awesome happens on screen.
Yeah. See, I remember those fatalities being much longer to do, but I think now, after playing it again, I think what was hard was the timing, because the
Yes.
fatalities are only like 3 or 4 buttons, but what was crazy is the timing.
Yeah, and I know in Mortal Kombat 3 they actually do get really complicated, because by the time 3 came out, people were complaining about the gore and everything.
Oh
And
yeah.
it and you know, since we're bringing it up, this game is one of the reasons why we have a rating system for games today.
It is.
I mean, talk about impacting the gaming industry. This game is the if you want to look at a defining moment in video game history, you look at Mortal
This is it.
Kombat for rating systems. Um, I think Sega had their own rating system at first,
Huh.
but yeah, when after this game came out, Sega was like, okay, we're gonna start rating our games, and then Mortal Kombat 2 comes out, and people were like, well, I mean, it's everywhere. We need to rate games overall on all consoles, and so then the ESRB came about,
Right.
and their rating system showed up, and every region has its own rating today. Even Australia took a long time to get their act together and get ratings, mature ratings on their games. I forget what it's called
Hmm.
over there, but
I
yeah,
think it's like
every
Peggy,
place.
at least for Europe or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what
I don't know
Japan.
how exactly how to say it, but
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Peggy. It's PEGI.
yeah,
I have
yeah,
no idea what the letters stand for, but I know in America, ESRB is the Entertainment Software Ratings Board.
yeah.
Now, the name Mortal Kombat is kind of a interesting story. Um, they were they had. Let me start over. They were about 6 months into development, and they couldn't come up with a game that they couldn't come up with a name that anybody liked. Uh, and there were a bunch of suggestions written out, like a Kumite, Dragon Attack, Death Blow. Kumite. Sorry, I totally
all
mispronounced
very
that.
cheesy, by the way.
Yes, all very cheesy names, and of course, Fatality was one of the suggested names. But I think somebody had written combat on one of the boards, and somebody else came along and changed the C to a K. And Midway was famous for making pinball games, and so pinball designer Steve Ritchie was sitting in Ed Boon's office, and he sees the word combat, and he's like, "Why don't you call it Mortal Kombat?" Which is a phrase, which used to be common in English. Now, every time you say Mortal Kombat, people think of the game. But
Yeah.
yeah, and Ed Boon was just, I mean, it just stuck. It makes sense. It's easy to remember. Yeah. And of course, because of the K joke written on the board, it made its way into the final product, and now they use a K in place of the letter C when it's a hard C sound.
In like everything.
Yeah. So I remember there was an advertisement for like Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and it's got Baraka, and he's got his arms crossed with the blades coming out, and the phrase in the ad is "It will consume you," and it's K instead of C.
I think I remember that now.
Yeah, and this any time throughout the series, like there's a hard C sound, you will see a K in this place.
Funny.
Like, there's the Ultimate Collection for the last Mortal Kombat game, and it's
got a K.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the impact section. How did this game impact you personally, LJ?
Well, I guess it's kind of funny because I have a really weird story. I guess at first you could say it. Honestly, I think it was one of the first games I was really into. I started playing games at very young, like when I was like 5 or 6. And so I remember in first grade, we used to do like journal stuff every morning. And we had this thing where we'd write a sentence about something or, our day or whatever. And so I did this drawing, and this is so bad too. Sub-Zero's Fatality where he rips their heads off?
Yeah.
Well, you're supposed to draw a picture in the journal, and I remember, like, I was talking about video games or something, and I would draw that scene with Sub-Zero with a head in his hand and stuff like that. I would draw that at school. And
Wow.
I did that multiple times, and it was, like, I didn't think anything of it. I was just a kid, like, that was my game, And so eventually the teacher, she called me up, and she's like, you got to start talking about something else. You got to start drawing something else. So it got to that point where, yeah, it was not, from the outside, it was not, probably didn't look healthy, but at the same time, I was just a kid. I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Looking back on it, that's pretty funny.
That is actually pretty funny that, when I was a kid and you had to journal every day or whatever, there's no way that I would have put that in my journal. Like, I mean, my parents wouldn't have let me play this back in the day. The few times that I did play, like, they weren't around,
Yeah, I guess that's the difference is my parents, they're very loose on what we got to play and on what we got to watch, kind of. Like, there was some stuff where they'd be like, no, you can't watch that. But, things like that, they were very loose on that kind of thing. So.
Yeah.
So what about you? How did this game affect you?
Well, like I said, I didn't really get to play it a whole lot as a kid. I knew that, like, if I tried to play this game, my parents would be against it. Like, I always understood what my boundaries were, and I didn't try to go outside of them.
Yeah.
And I thank my parents for that, because that has made me somebody who stays within the law. Anyway, but I don't remember playing this in the arcades because we went to Shakey's a lot, and I don't think our local Shakey's had this game because it's a family restaurant.
Yeah.
And I never went to like the standalone arcades. I don't think I always played like TMNT Arcade Edition at Shakey's, and being in a family with 4 boys who all want to play video games, you could spend $20 very quickly. That's a lot of money back in 1992. So, I didn't have a whole lot of personal impact. I played a lot of Street Fighter 2 on my SNES, I remember. And,
that was one of mine too.
And I'm definitely a lot more familiar with that game than I am with this. But I decided to talk about this game because of its impact in the gaming industry as a whole.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it's interesting that fighting games have kind of ebbed and flowed, or I guess we could say that, ebbed and flowed over the years. Like, they were really big in the mid-90s, and they kind of dropped off toward the end of the decade, and they came back again in the early aughts, and then dropped off again, and now here they are back again for the third time, resurgence at the end of or early mid 2010s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now the big thing is the pro gaming and stuff like that, and people are into like the esports and competitive stuff, which those people are crazy because they don't fight based on moves; they fight by frames and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you can get this character while he's in this frame.
And I cannot play like that. Like I play for fun, Like, and if I start getting competitive, like I'm gonna get angry that I'm losing. Because this person's way better than me, and it's like, okay, like I have to remember, what is the point of playing games? It's to have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Not having fun, why play the game? So and
hence me rage quitting against Goro the other day.
And like the modern versions have become so technical, like you can't even play them on a modern controller. Like you have to have a fight stick.
Yeah,
At least in my mind.
They're a big thing.
Like I remember Injustice had a free weekend, and so I downloaded it on my PC, and I pull out my controller, and it's like, press both triggers and like 2 face buttons and a directional stick at the same time. Just like, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I love that game.
And I know like Injustice and Mortal Kombat run on the same engine, and like even like the Street Fighter 4 and 5 like have similar mechanics with the regular controllers. They're a 6-button fighter, and I can't do it. If I were to play the modern fighting games, I would need a fight stick.
And what's kind of a shame about modern fighters versus old school fighters is a lot of, like I was talking about, the online stuff and pro stuff, and more of these games cater to that. Like they don't really have arcade modes, or some of them have story modes. Yeah. But it's just like they're very weak because they're trying to cater to that audience that wants the online competitiveness. Which for me, it's like just give me an arcade ladder and let me tear these dudes up, and
Exactly, because like that's what made them fun and challenging back in the day, and they're kind of alienating the masses by eliminating the arcade tree or the couch competitive playing with your brothers or your friends. My brother Gabriel just beats me every time in a fighting game. I don't know why. I'm bad at fighting games is what it is. That's why. It's not like he's amazing at them or anything. I'm just bad at them. But like I can fight against the computer a lot of times and hold my own, and I have fun doing it. But against human beings, I'm terrible. So like
and then that's how I got into these games too. These fighting games is because I played with my brother a lot. And I can remember the first day that I really poured some time into a fighting game, and I was able to, start beating my brother, and my brother goes like, wow, like, you've been practicing or what? And I'm like, yep. And so, that day I could compete at his level. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. The only game that's ever happened on was Super Smash Brothers, the original. I had put hours and hours into that game, and had gotten really good with Ness. And my brother hadn't played in a while, and we played together. And I'm like knocking him out. I'm knocking him away from the platform, and then I'm chasing him down to like do a meteor smash
Cool.
and knock him out. And he almost got mad at me for doing that. And I'm like, hey man, it's part of the game.
Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, Smash Bros. Is the only game I've ever been decent at when it comes to fighting games, because it's not like a combo-based game like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, or
Right.
Tekken. I got decent at Soul Calibur 2, say.
Yeah, that was another one.
He could beat me at that, actually. He would play as oh gosh, who's the blonde guy that fences?
Oh, Siegfried.
Siegfried, yeah.
Yeah.
He would play as Siegfried, and I would always play as Link. And he could beat me as Siegfried. But getting off on a tangent, I remember the first time I pulled out my bow in Soul Calibur 2, because Link is like the only character with ranged attacks in that game.
Yeah.
And I pulled out my bow and I shot him, and he's like, "What the heck? I can't do that."
Oh,
He's like,
that's great.
Yeah, he kind of got mad at me for that.
That's funny.
But back to Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
The original Mortal Kombat video game debuted in 1992. It is a combination of storyline, character, and mega violence. Soon made it a worldwide hit. And the controversy engendered by its blood-gushing special effects only served to boost its popularity. I can attest to that. One of the reasons why I wanted to play this game was because it was bloody and violent. And I remember there were several other bloody and violent video games that came out around this time, like Splatterhouse.
Oh, yeah.
There was a time-traveling fighting game, I remember, where like you would cut people's limbs off, or like you could get an almost instant KO, or yeah, you could get an instant KO by cutting someone's head off.
That was Internal Champions, I think.
Yeah.
I love that game. That's another Genesis favorite of mine.
Yeah, it was ported to Genesis, but I remember playing that in the arcade. We went to the movies one time, and it was there. Yeah, that game was nuts.
That's another good one.
So yeah,
and it's funny though. If you think about how that was caused so much controversy, back in the day, and look at games now, it's like it's kind of funny thinking about it.
Yeah, it is, because like every game is bloody and violent practically, unless it's a Nintendo game.
Yeah.
Or some kind of like retro style game. Actually, there's a lot of retro games that are pretty bloody. Like I mentioned, Splatterhouse is one of them.
Oh yeah.
Even original Ghosts and Goblins is kind of bloody. I mean, it's very stylized, but still, it's bloody.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're out there. It's just it wasn't really noticed until Mortal Kombat came out.
Yeah, because in Mortal Kombat you're ripping parts out, heads off, and doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, and making 4 rib cages pop out of people.
Yeah, and then 10 just extended that to beyond not suitable for work levels.
Yeah, I know that in 9 they added the X-rays, and of course the X-rays have just gotten worse in 10. And I don't want to get too graphic, but Johnny Cage does the splits and hits the guy right where it counts, and that's an X-ray move now. That's always been one of his moves, but that's an X-ray move now, and you see what goes on inside the guy, and it is not safe for work graphic.
Yeah, exactly.
Ugh. It's cringe-inducing, actually.
Yeah, no, actually, I forget. There was a fatality or something where I almost got nauseous looking at it, and I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen. And so I think that's kind of part of why I stopped playing 10 because it was just too much.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that Mortal Kombat 1, that's where all this stuff got started.
Yeah. And I remember as a kid thinking that the game looked so realistic because of the digitized photos. And then I was just playing the Genesis version in preparation of this, and I'm just like, man, this game is so pixelated.
You can actually say we've played the game this week.
Yeah, I know, right?
And what's funny is every time you guys have been like, "Oh, I haven't played it," I'm sitting here listening to you guys, recording, and I'm thinking, "Well, I did."
Well, somebody prepared. He just can't really speak up about it.
Yeah.
This week you can. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, continue on the controversy that the hearings on video game violence and corruption of society was actually headed by Joseph Lieberman, who eventually became a presidential candidate a few years ago, and Herb Cole. I don't recognize that name, but they were concerned about the realistic replica of human figures in video games. Night Trap, that's another one. That was a digitized video, actually. I remember Night Trap. It was kind of what's the word? A quick time event game before that was a actual genre like it is today. But all the quick time events were based on full motion video digitized film. So like it played on like the 3DO or the CDI or even the Sega CD. I think the Night Trap was on Sega CD actually. And so like you would see a scene play out and then you press a button at the right time or a button combination to keep your character from dying. But like if you didn't do that in time, then your character would just straight up get murdered on screen.
Oh yeah.
And it was bad.
I've never actually seen that. I'm gonna look it up just because I'm curious.
Oh man, later. And it's like super campy too. Like the dialogue.
Oh, I'm sure it is
cheesy and it's bad. And there was supposed to be like I think they kept the original film reels for this game, Night Trap. Getting off on a tangent, sorry. And they were supposed to re-release it on with HD version with the film all like remastered and everything, and where it doesn't look pixelated.
Wow.
But I don't know if that ever came to fruition. Like something came up, I think. But
I was gonna say I can't see that happening if it did,
But yeah. So Night Trap was just one of the games. Lethal Enforcers, I don't remember that game. But I do remember talking about cartoonish violence like Narc. I don't know if you remember that game. That game was hyper violent and a little bit bloody, but it was very stylized, like I mentioned with Ghosts and Goblins. But yeah. Oh, here's Eternal Champions mentioned. Yeah. Where they travel through time and cut people's limbs off. Blood all over the screen. It's very stylized, cartoonish, almost. But yeah, these Senate hearings eventually led to the ESRB that we have today and other ratings boards throughout the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the more interesting things about Mortal Kombat has been the rumors. Do you remember when video game rumors were a thing on the playground?
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh yeah, I loved it. And like, the internet was not really a big thing. Like email existed in 1992, but like the World Wide Web or even like America Online did not exist as we have it today.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, video game rumors were a big thing on the playground, and how you like learned things and secrets in games was you would ask your friends, and hopefully somebody had a subscription to a video game magazine and they had read it.
Yeah.
So there's EGM and Nintendo Power, and I think Genesis had or Sega had a short-lived Genesis magazine. I can't remember what it was called. We talked about it during the Sonic episode.
Yeah. I don't remember it either.
But yeah, like, there were these different magazines that would come out and publish secrets about these games. And then, of course, kids would always misremember or make up their own. And then people would do a little too much investigating. There's an item listed in the audit menu for the original Mortal Kombat called Airmax. And it's short for Error Macro. And people thought that Airmac was a character, like some hidden character. And so they came up with this idea that it was a red ninja, and he existed in the game, and you could see his data still there. Scorpion, a reptile, would glitch out and flash red for 1 frame. And there were even like fake screenshots where you could see the name Airmac, and there was a red ninja fighting against somebody else, and of course Ed Boon and John Tobias, being the jokesters they did nothing to dispel these rumors.
That's great.
They're just like, oh, that's funny.
And then now, obviously, the second one, we had that character.
Yeah, so eventually Airmac and like Noob Saibot and all these guys,
that's great.
Came to be real, and these palette swap ninjas. And
then I just realized. I mean, I feel like I knew about it before, but Noob Saibot is Tobias Boon backwards.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's where the name came from. He was one of those rumored characters also, because he's like all black, right? Yeah, and again, fake screenshot, totally doctored up, but eventually made it into the game.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Now, of course, there are different versions of this game. Like we mentioned, like the arcade perfect versions are hard to come by. Mm-hmm. But like the SNES version of the original Mortal Kombat did not have blood in it, because Nintendo has always been family friendly, and they were very strict on the games they allowed on their consoles. Nowadays, they're a lot more relaxed, but because of the rating system. But back then, they had really tight control, and so there was a rumor going around that there was a blood code to re-enable the blood rather than. Now, this does exist on the Genesis version, which is why I have the Genesis version, and it actually outsold back in the day the SNES version like 3-1, I want to say. Because of that. And the code, I mentioned it last week when we were talking about video game codes in Donkey Kong Country. The code to unlock blood in the Genesis version is ABACAB, ABACABB. And last week I thought, it's just some random combination of letters. It's easy to remember because it sounds like a word. Well, I looked it up, and it's actually a reference to an album by the band Genesis of the same name, ABACAB, but with 1 B at the end.
That's funny.
Yeah. So the Genesis version is a reference to this album by Genesis, the band.
Yeah. And then what I noticed too is I didn't have to do that for the PC DOS version.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's because it was obviously they figured maybe less kids are going to be trying to play the computer version, or.
Well, the glorious PC gaming race is usually a little more mature than the filthy console peasants. So.
Yeah, makes sense.
I did not have a good gaming PC until I was 28 years old, I want to say.
Yeah, it took a while for me too.
Yeah, and now that I've got one, like it's been 4 years, and I want a new one. Like I need a new one. I've upgraded it at least twice, and I don't think it can handle another upgrade. Anyway, so unless you have anything else to add, let's see. We had a tweet from Nolan Brown, who couldn't make it today, but he's asking us who our favorite character is and why. So why don't you go ahead and answer first, Nolan, LJ?
see. I'm trying to think of who it was first. Um, gosh, I think it was always Sub-Zero, and I think still to this day, it has to be Sub-Zero.
Yeah. Today, my favorite character is Sub-Zero. He's pretty easy to use, and I like the freezing mechanic, which gives you a second or two to think of a move to do next. And if you execute the move properly, it does more damage than normal, I think.
Yeah.
So that's why I like Sub-Zero, and but I think originally I liked Raiden. I just thought it was so cool that he was this thunder god that was fighting against these mortals. It seemed really neat. But as I tried to use him, I realized he was a very technical character and hard to use.
You know what's crazy is now that I think about Raiden is I wonder if you ever seen that movie Big Trouble in Little China. I wonder if those guys in that movie were inspiration for his character.
Oh yeah, the Raiden in Mortal Kombat is based on Japanese legend.
Okay.
So there's what's the religion? Taoism, I want to say. Japanese religion,
right.
Shinto. The Japanese Shinto religion has Raiden is one of the thunder gods in that religion. So
that's same concept. That kind of I guess that movie is the thunder god thing. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, Shintoism is based on Buddhism and Taoism, which both came from China. So it would make sense that they would have
thinking
similar...
about the inspirations they took from many movies, I figured, I wonder if that has any connection. But there's the connection.
Maybe as far as like the look of Raiden goes, yeah. But the lore of him is definitely from Shintoism. There's a Gaijin Goomba episode about that. I don't know if you've ever heard of that YouTuber. He does a show called Culture Shock, where he looks at culture in video games, and he's an American Caucasian who spent time in Japan and experienced culture shock himself, but loved it. And so he loves to just break down culture in gaming and explain why things are in games. And so there's one of the weirdest games on the NES is a game called Monster Party, and people think it's weird just because it was censored, but even the Japanese version is super weird still. And he explains why it is the way it is. It's a lot of Japanese culture that we as Westerners just don't understand because it's not part of our culture. Right. And so he did an episode on the Thunder God Raiden, and yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Check that out.
Yeah, Gaijin Goomba, because Gaijin means white devil in Japanese.
Yeah.
And that's what he is. He's a white devil. He's learned their culture and assimilated it. And anyway,
cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. I don't do a lot of YouTubing, but I'm gonna check that out.
I don't do nearly as much as I used to, actually. It ended up consuming way too much time. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
But speaking of Nolan, next week he gets to pick the game. And
yes, which I know what it is.
Yes, so. And so I'm going to play 20 questions to figure out what the game is next week.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so is it a multi-platform game?
No.
No, it is only on one platform. Okay. So, let's start listing platforms. Is it on a Nintendo console?
Nope.
No. Is it on a Sega console?
Nope.
Is it on a Sony console?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Should have gone with that one first. Okay, so it's not multi-platform. It's not Nintendo. It's not Sega. It is Sony. Okay, so that we're at 4.
You spent a couple questions just trying to figure out what platform it was on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you got to do that sometimes.
Yeah. No, exactly.
So it's on a Sony. Is it on the PlayStation 1?
It is not.
Is it on the PlayStation 2?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Okay. It wouldn't be on the 3 because that doesn't count as far as our cutoff goes. So it had to be one of those two. On PlayStation 2. Trying to think of games Nolan has played that we have all played. Is it in the Jak and Daxter series?
Yes.
Yes. So is it Jak 2?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
You got it.
Good thing I have that game. I bought the whole trilogy last time we talked about
Nice.
Jak.
I figured once you knew it was on PS2, and you were thinking about what games Nolan was into, it's like, oh yeah, he'll get it quick. So.
Oh yeah. So awesome.
That's really funny that that you went through all the platforms practically.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking of I shouldn't have said Sega. I really shouldn't. Like, Nintendo is like a really broad target, and it's easy to hit. So that's why I start with that one. And I went way too narrow with Sega, secondly.
Yeah. Well, you also got to remember, I don't think any of you guys really grew up with Sega systems. I'm the only one that kind of has.
Yeah. I don't own a Sega system to this day. I was playing Mortal Kombat on a Retron 5. So.
Yeah, for those of you who listen to a lot of podcasts, we got this idea off of shout out to IGN Game Scoop. They do fans send in questions over there, or they send in like a game idea, and then so the people or the host will choose one, and so they have to guess it. So what we decided to do here is, whenever somebody chooses a game, one of us will, have it in our mind, and then the rest of us can guess it. So, it's kind of a little take on what they do, but, we kind of made it our own thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad to know that we're totally ripping somebody off.
Well, not totally.
I'm just joking.
No, but honestly though, that's kind of as I guess you could say a producer of podcasts. I tend to listen to other podcasts and just kind of feed off of them. Notice certain things they do, the way they go about doing things, and so I've just been trying to take notes and just figure out any way we can grow and make things more interesting as we do this.
Yeah, I really should listen to more podcasts, and I don't. Just because, I don't want to be repeating what other people say. I want to kind of have my own content. But at the same time, I need to know what they're doing so I can be more professional. Anyway.
And it's funny because sometimes I find myself listening, because I listen to music and I listen to stuff while I work because, I have the luxury of doing that considering, my line of work.
Yeah.
And so there have been days where I don't even listen to, I usually listen to Spotify. There have been days where, I listen to all of IGN's podcasts. And so most of them come out, around the same day. And so it's sometimes I find myself listening to podcasts, nothing but podcasts for, a whole shift.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. And speaking of music and stuff, we opened the podcast with a track called The Courtyard, which is usually the first track you would hear in a fight in this game. And it's very iconic of this particular game. I haven't played many of the other games, so I don't know if the theme has been carried over to the others. But I know, every time I play the original Mortal Kombat, this is the song that I think of when I think of Mortal Kombat.
It's usually the first stage you fight at.
Yeah, exactly. This is the courtyard. And so in closing, we're going to hear a track called Goro and the Emperor. And it starts off a little slow and picks up right about the 38-second mark. And so that's where I want you, LJ, to start it at for our listeners. Is at 38 seconds. I looked at the YouTube video. So
yeah, I saw that in the show notes.
So, Goro and the Emperor, it would be the final boss music, and it just sounds like final boss music. It is really intense and gets your blood pumping and makes you want to win, and it lets you know that this is do or die. So, and it's everything Final Boss music should be, and I love it.
Totally.
So, anyway, thanks for listening, everyone.
Oh, you almost forgot to plug us.
Yeah, well, I'm doing that right now.
Oh, okay, I thought you were closing.
Sorry, kind of outro and plug at the same time. So yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. My name is Joel Watt. Anywhere you can find me on the internet, you will find me under Obi-Watt Kenobi, because I love Star Wars. Find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Anywhere you can find me, you'll find me under that name. And our normal hosts are Nolan Brown. You can find him at Baseman214 on Twitter, and at Twitch, you can find him under Icy White Falcon. He has a YouTube channel, I think is also Baseman214. And of course, bass is spelled B-A-S-S like the instrument, and it's not bass like the fish, it's bass like the instrument, because that's what he plays, is bass. You can find Patrick on Facebook.com/AboveParProduction. I think there is an S at the end. He mentioned that in our chat.
He did say that.
There is an S, so I'm going to put that in the show notes. On Twitter, he's at Patrick Proper. Twitch, he's at Huge Cow Patty. For everything else, you can find him at PatrickAllenRyan.com. That will take you to his YouTube channels. Again, PatrickAllenRyan.com. And he's got a really interesting ministry going on there. What he's doing there. And of course, LJ, where can we find you?
You can find me just about everywhere under the name Warhero LJ. So that'd be twitch.tv/Warhero LJ. Let's see where else. Twitter, Warhero LJ. All that good stuff. Also, Joel's mentioned it before. Joel streams Saturdays for Geeks Under Grace, and I handle Sundays, so you can find us both there as well.
Yeah, we're kind of like tag teaming right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the Geeks Under Grace stream in my pitch. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just figured out.
Cool. And of course, you can find the Original Gamers podcast on Twitter at OfficialOGCast, on Twitch at Original Gamers Podcast, on Instagram at official.ogcast, and of course, find us on Podbean at official ogcast.podbean.com.
I think it's just ogcast.podbean.com.
No, it's ogcast.podbean.com. Blah.
Yep.
Yeah, and you can plug the RSS feed URL into your favorite RSS reader and follow us there. That'd be great. And of course, we are always looking for other ways to expand our reach on the internet. And so if you have suggestions, go ahead and tweet us at officialogcast on Twitter. And if you have any questions about this show you would like answered, because next week we're playing, what is it again? Jak 2. So if you have any questions about Jak 2, go ahead and tweet us about that. So that tells me as soon as I finish Uncharted 3 and 4, I need to finish Jak 1 so I can play Jak 2 and get prepared for next. I have a lot of video gaming to do next week.
Oh yeah, me too.
Hopefully it gets done. I have kind of a chill week at work, so that's good.
Cool.
All right, well, again, thanks for listening, everybody, and enjoy the music.
Alrighty. Catch you next time, everybody.
Be good, humans. That's how I normally sign off.